Okay, meeting is called to order. At this time, we have an open forum for any member of the public present or online to raise any concern that's not on the agenda. Do we have anything from the public?
No one online. Let me just check the email. No emails.
Okay. So I think we also want to recognize our new board members that we have. Do we need to have them sworn in, or has that already been done?
I think Lorena already took care of that before.
Okay, you're sworn in? Yeah.
Yes.
You're sworn in? Hey, we're good to go. Oh, nice to have you on board. I think the flood board has been particularly active and supportive from the standpoint of what the town has been doing and very proactive in relationship to some of the concerns that we all have about flooding issues in Corte Madera. The approval of the minutes from the August 12th meeting, which was our last meeting. Does anybody have any updates, changes, corrections? Is there a move to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And we want to discuss the meeting schedule for 2025.
Yeah, let me see. So there was a recent council resolution to extend the flood board, and they changed a few small things and added some requirements. So one of them is that once a year we just go through the annual schedule for meetings. So we're just checking the box here. Flood board will continue to meet on the second Monday of even months in the council chambers. And then meetings in 2025 will be today, April 14th, June 9th, August 11th, October 13th, December 8th. So just basically need to have that in one of our meetings and then we're good to go. So any questions on that?
Sorry, I just have a question. What happens when the meetings are canceled? Like, what's the decision around canceling a meeting?
Generally, it relates to, are there action items? Is there anything to really present? Has there been an issue that's come up that we need to address or resolve? And if there are not a lot of items or something is going to be ready for the following 2 months later, we go ahead and cancel.
Yep, correct.
Okay. Marina Village berm, FEMA grant update.
Yeah, so the town applied for, after our shoreline adaptation outreach, we applied for a FEMA grant to start the process of making improvements to the berm. And the town was selected for a flood mitigation assistance grant for $887,000 with a local match, which brings the total to 1.2 million. And this is for basically just start the design portion of the project, which will include environmental permitting and basically just looking at options for different designs. Right now, so FEMA selected us for the grant, but they're kind of like everything with FEMA, it takes some time. So right now they've been sending us requests for information that we've been responding to, and we're currently just waiting to see when FEMA will formally award the grant to the town. So just kind of waiting for now, but we're looking forward to getting that project going. And that's pretty much it right now. So any questions on the board?
Gotcha.
Press harder. Oh, there we go. Just
So once you get the award of the grant, then you'll begin the process of getting an RFP out to get consultants, all that. Is that kind of the process?
Yeah. Yeah, once we're formally awarded, there's usually a request for authorization, and that date is when we can start billing to it. So then we'll get a consultant on board and proceed from there.
Do we have any preliminary ideas from you or RJ as far as what you think is feasible and we'd like to see?
Um,
I'm happy to comment on that. I mean, with that amount of money, we put in our scope that we're hoping to clear environmental compliance. That likely would not include the permitting aspect, which is kind of its own animal, so to speak, environmental permitting. We're hoping to get to 60% designs. We anticipate a lot of public outreach as part of this. You know, we're going to be, you know, the existing flood barrier berm is in a lot of backyards. And so we understand that that's, you know, very sensitive and very important to all those property owners. So there's going to be a lot of kind of meeting with stakeholders, really seeing how this project can be a win-win for everyone. But we hope that, you know, it can eventually achieve the ultimate goal of protecting them and the rest of our surrounding community from, you know, increases in tide events and potential sea level rise and mitigating for future settlement and all those factors. So yeah, hope that fills in some gaps.
So I would like to offer a suggestion of what we might try to look at. Let me just pass a couple of these around to everybody.
Look at you.
Yeah. Get one to Chris. So mine is a simple design coming from a non-engineer, but just living at sea level. And my thought is currently there's a lot of environmental restrictions on what we can and can't do in regard to wetland vegetation and impacting that. So I would suggest or think that we might look at a simplest solution as possible that would help us for the next 20 to 40 years, say, raising that berm up 2 or 3 feet. And the idea is really from what the town has done along the Bay Trail that goes along Redwood across from the Village Shopping Center, where when you expanded the pathway along there, on the water side, you had a small retaining wall made of redwood with 4x4s and redwood boards just to expand that, but to keep any material from impacting the wetlands that are there. And the two designs that I have, one is if you have wetlands on both sides, and the other would be if you are in somebody's backyard and you couldn't impact the wetlands on the creek side, but it could spill, material could spill over into someone's backyard just as additional material, planting and such. I think the reason to try to do something simple that would just be good for 20 to 40 years would be that 20 to 40 years from now, there may be a much different way of looking at flood protection and environmental mitigation, and that there may be a simpler solution or some environmental impact may be allowed if it's only temporary at that time. So this is just my thoughts on this, and I'd like to pitch that and put that in the record and see if you and RJ think that's feasible at all.
I'll just comment a couple of things, not necessarily on the exhibit because I don't have it in front of me, but just on schedule, we're hoping to get the award, I would say realistically July. And so I think with that in mind, we'll be lucky to have a consultant, a design consultant, environmental consultant on by, say, October, November, because we have to follow the FEMA process. So that's a ways out. And then we'll probably start with a lot of topographic survey, understand the elevations, do a lot of environmental compliance work, looking at where are the wetlands that we have to avoid, all those things. So totally want to see the diagram and the exhibit and the concept, but just want to also say that there's just going to be a lot of work that goes into this project before we can really even talk about a concept. It's really just understanding the constraints and the things that we have to avoid. So just trying to put a little. I know we're all excited. I want to just be a little realistic about kind of where we are on the schedule. So thank you.
Sure.
One question is, was any geotech work a part of the scoping for this initial grant?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we quite a bit. So roughly $100,000 of geotechnical work. So obviously we don't want to just do more soil borings where we don't need to. Obviously there's been a lot of work that's been done out there in the past. So leveraging that, but also taking additional data points where it makes sense.
Okay, David.
Hi, RJ, Chris. Obviously, I'm a very big proponent of this, and to be an advocate. You kind of answered it, RJ. To be realistic, I don't put pressure on you, but 5 years completion, 7, 10, I mean, I know there's lots of variables, but
Yeah.
I want to sell this to my neighbors.
So this FEMA grant for the scope that we applied for needs to be done within 3 years. So that means within 3 years, we need to have gone through, our target of environmental compliance, 6% design, land surveying, initiate right of way. Obviously, if we can go further, we're going to do that. But that is what we submitted, and they're pretty firm on the 3-year timeframe for that.
Oh, that's great. Just encourage you whenever a document, designs, plans are publicly available to make that available, either through this group or on the town website.
Absolutely. Yeah, I anticipate this to have a pretty robust public outreach element, and really will probably be, the first meeting, at least the first meeting will be, establishing goals for the project, looking at constraints before we even really dive into various alternatives.
Okay, any other comments in regard to this?
I just had a quick question. The 313,000 of matching, where does that come from?
Most likely from our Measure F sales tax fund. So
That's
where we fund a lot of capital improvement projects out of, it's like a quarter cent sales tax that started in 2017, I believe. So yeah, that's where the local match will come from. It won't come out of the general fund.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. This is really good to have gotten the FEMA grant. That is a lot of background work just to get to that point to get that. So congratulations, nicely done. And, obviously we look forward to working with you on this and supporting it. One of the things we can do is, make the pitch to the public that this is necessary and this is being done to protect not only, people that are close to the water, but interior, where if a levee would break, you'd, see a couple of feet of water in your house. So it's good that we're moving on it.
Yep, definitely. We'll provide updates as time goes on.
Okay. So fall annual gate maintenance.
So every year, we have 2 rounds of gate maintenance, one in the fall and one in the spring, just for our new members. And so our maintenance staff go around and they have a list of locations. They inspect and maintain like all our pump stations and gates, typically, and then just a few other trouble areas. So last fall, around October, our staff went around and checked everything out, and there was a few noted issues, that I can go through. So the San Clemente pump station, the transducer failed, which is the part that basically detects the water level in the wet well and turns the pump station on and off. So there was, yeah, that's always bad news because, then the pump station doesn't automatically turn on and it can cause flooding. So luckily we caught that in time. It's been replaced and everything's working.
Chris, could you identify where these pump stations are?
Yes, let me, I don't know. Well, okay, I can pull up a map and try and point them out.
Or,
Um, 1 second.
or just verbally describe them so everybody knows what we're talking about for sure?
Sure. So San Clemente Pump Station is our largest flood control pump station in town. It's on the east side of town on Madera del Presidio. And it's right here actually, but it basically collects water from this major watershed, both on the east and west side of Highway 101 and pumps it out to San Clemente Creek. So it's definitely an important one. It keeps water from flooding a lot of the flat area near Nugget Market and Miranda Estates neighborhood. So yeah, so that was San Clemente Pump Station. That's fixed and it's working now. San Clemente Floodgate had the same issue, but there was 2 transducers, one on each side of the gate that detects the water levels and automatically opens and closes the gate. Both of them broke. And while they were replaced, we're still having issues because the gate's so old that the controller won't work with the replacement transducers. So, and we're having this issue more and more at all our pump stations. They're all anywhere from like 20 to 37 years old. And so that's the master plan called it out, but basically they're past their useful life. And so it's getting harder and harder to find replacement parts. So, that has gone on our list, on the master plan as like an urgent repairs to replace the controller so we can get the gate working automatically. Because right now our maintenance staff have to go out there and manually open and close it, to make it work.
So this is the floodgate that's right on Paradise at the end of San Clemente, the culvert going underneath the shopping centers by the
Correct.
fire station.
Yeah. So
And that's normally stays closed, is that right?
well, normally, so the gate in conjunction with the pump station controls the water, behind Nugget Market. And so in the winter, it will open it during a low tide. So if there's a major storm and a lot of water is coming down, it's low tide, the gate opens and water is able to get out that way and also is pumped out. So it definitely helps control the amount of water in the neighborhood behind. In the summer, basically, the pump station almost never turns on. The gate is controlling the water level mostly. So we definitely use it. And right now it's basically just shut because we can't have someone stay out there and open and close it on the tides.
Okay.
So we're looking to repair that soon. Goldenheim pump station, we installed a new junction box and basically we're able to remove all the splices in the cables controlling the pumps. And so that's been a major issue for like years. There's always alarms going off and the pump station's breaking. And so far everything's been working well. So that's a good one.
Yes,
Um,
Sachi?
I have a kind of question slash comment because, I heard people talking about the big storm in December when the power went out.
oh
And
yeah.
the pump station went down, right? It's at the foot of my driveway. And so I don't remember if the master plan had any discussion about like backup power or, I mean, at that point it was flooded in that area. So I don't know that there's any practical way to bring in like a portable generator or whatever. But it certainly slowed down like the draining of the streets because we had probably, I would say, a foot of water on the crown of the road because the drainage was right up towards within probably a foot or so of my garage. And so just a thought. I don't know if it made it into the master plan. I don't know if you recall or not.
We have a handful of portable generators, like on trailers that we can move around, but typically, I don't know if we have one for every pump station. I believe Golden Hind, you can plug one in. It's just usually when there's that large of a storm, our crews are running around all over. So, but yeah, in an emergency, I think we could power it with a generator. Let's see. And also,
I just have a question. So when something like that happens, what do you do? Do you call
You
the city or like,
Because our experience with having lived it, Bob knows it too, is it's at the height of the tide, king tide, rain, and the road's flooded. I do have maybe a potential action that I'm willing to work on kind of like a road closure guidance, but we just wait. You wait for the tide to go out and it will all drain. So really, it's just a waited out kind of a thing. I mean, the pump station, had the power been on, would have cleared the road much faster. I think it took, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hours or something. I think if the pump station had been on, but a tree went down across Paradise. So we were out of power for like, I don't know, like 36, 40 hours, something like that. So it just was, kind of a perfect storm of events. So.
Yeah, Sally, the real problem along there is that area is so low that at regular high tides, water will come between the houses, flood the streets, and you get a king tide, it's running all the way down to the San Clemente pump station, and then it's just recirculating the water back out to the bay. The long-term solution would be to have a retaining wall behind those homes and also a pump where the sanitary pump station now has just a gravity outlet. But that's the long-term solution to try to deal with that.
yeah, and that's another priority area to look into building a berm or levee. It started with Marina Village.
I guess the reason behind my question was more, do residents actually know what to do or who to call when something happens? Like when the power goes out or
There's nobody
There's-
to call.
okay.
There's nothing to do. You're
just
as,
at the mercy.
Sachi says, you're just stuck with it until the tide goes back out.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we would encourage an emergency to call Public Works, and even if there's a chance we can do anything, our maintenance staff will try and help. But yeah, at a certain point, if we're fighting the tides, there's not a whole lot you
Yeah,
can do.
I guess the question was, do you have a generator? I don't know why this keeps going off. If you have a generator, like who would you call to even know to hook, you know what I mean?
In my experience,
Thanks.
if there is a air quotes emergency, you can call the non-emergency Corte Madera police number and they
Yeah.
will call Public Works.
Got it.
Yeah, they have our after hours number that goes straight to whoever's on call. So
And arguably kind of what is an emergency, right? If there were a medical emergency, I'd call the fire department. They'd come out, they'd wade through, they'd pick whoever up and everything. But, the emergency is kind of, there's no life threatened. It's potential for some, property damage.
I had sought you just to comment quickly on something you said, I think is worth restating. That when there's water in the streets like that, we might not be able to get Public Works out before it recedes, but to get people to stop driving is going to be a huge advantage to those folks who are getting water up into their garages. And that's a pretty simple thing for us to be able, I think, to provide maybe some guidance for, just putting out cones or something so people stop putting their.
Yeah, and I had it on my list to develop some guidelines to work with Public Works on and to stage things like some barriers and things like that. So I think down at your end, Bob, people were just parking cars across so people wouldn't drive, and I'd yell a bunch of people. It's like, well, how am I supposed to get out? It's like, go out the other way, and just know that, just for people to be aware. Even the new residents don't exactly know. They think if you go faster, it's better. It's like, no, you're just still getting salt water in your car. So there's some education we need to do, but I will work on drafting some guidance, hand it off to you, Chris, and maybe we can all work together at finding a place to stage some resources, right? Wherever it is, so that, even if Public Works can't get out there, I mean, I'm happy to go wait around and grab some barriers and put up some caution tape and just, keep people from just driving through. And at that time, PG&E also had like Paradise closed off on that end. So that whole Golden Height entrance was closed for like, I don't know, like a day. So it was kind of more.
Yeah, I think that's a good item to discuss further. I know we've talked about in the past. I think we were hoping that, we could have the best of both worlds and that, the residents could still get access, but then everyone else would kind of stay away. But I think what we saw is even though we put more kind of advisories about going slow, it didn't really move the needle. So I think, what really is going to help is if we just decide to close it to everyone, or if not, it's just going to be, hoping that people follow whatever the guidance is. So I think you're right. We should talk about it further at a future meeting. So.
Yeah, and we've been working with our maintenance staff to set up road close it through traffic. So at least then residents should be able to get in and people go around, but not everyone follows the signs,
Okay, item for future discussion.
All right, so moving down the list, Lagoon 1 pump station, definitely is getting old and having some issues. The suction tubes on the pumps have corrosion, and the holes have started to form, and then the anodes are at the end of their life, need to be replaced. So that's kind of going on our to-do list. Our staff did some work on it and fixed and recut some of it, but there's more to do. So.
And Lagoon 1 is the big lagoon.
Yes. Yeah. And then last is pipe outfalls. The crews weren't able to go out to basically investigate all of them this fall because the tides just weren't working in their favor. But we're just continuing to have ongoing issues with the outfall pipes being buried or heavily corroded. So they're just kind of falling apart where they outfall into the bay. So it's going to be difficult to replace them. So that's just something that, is on our to-do list for the future.
Is that an item in the master plan?
I think it's mentioned, but as of right now, it hasn't really become a critical issue. So it's just something we're going to have to deal with at some time. It'll require environmental permits and working in people's properties most of the time in their backyard. So it's going to be difficult. But
The town actually has easements for those.
I think for the most part, yes, but I haven't done the research on it. So
I mean, I haven't seen it listed on the maps as easement, but it should be.
Yeah.
The other thing in relationship to the pipe outfalls, the ones that have check valves or duct valves in there, how often does DPW go in and inspect those and make sure that they're functioning properly? That is one of the things that comes up with the king tides and rain in particular is residents will notice if it seems like the check valve is failing and will notify DPW. They can't do anything when the tide is in like that, but once the tide goes out, they can come and check it and make sure it's functioning so that it doesn't cause more water in the streets than it normally would.
Pretty much every gate maintenance, the check valves are inspected. So they did that in the fall because there's constantly debris getting stuck in them and then
Yeah.
they don't function. So they always take a look at them.
Yeah, I was actually in a related thing to the outfalls. I didn't know if that we look at there are certain outfalls that don't have check valves. And so we're getting a lot of flooding in the Golden Hind stretch for those outfalls. And I didn't know when you brought up the maintenance on those outfalls, if it's planned to not only improve them by taking the sediment out of them or dealing with the corroded pipes, but also improve them while you've got access with check valves. So we can keep that water out of the streets.
So that's actually been one of the issues is we used to have check valves on the outfall portion of the pipe, but it doesn't do anything when you have a hole in the pipe right behind it because the metal pipe is corroded. So, and even some of the like duckbill check valves that were on there, we find just stuck in the mud because they fell off. So now, I think I actually forgot to put this on here, but we are planning to add some new check valves to the interior portion to basically solve that issue. So that's on the plan for this year. We're gonna add 2 new ones and replace one that's broken. So
By that, do you mean in the drainage inlets?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering myself because I have one in front of my house. It seemed like a pretty easy access if you wanted to.
Yeah. So they're on Goldenheim, I think they're all protected except for one at I think it's at Seawolf or at Prince Royal. So we're gonna plan to install one there and then we should have full protection along Goldenheim check valve. So that'll be an improvement.
So going forward, once that one's done, all of the outfalls should have inboard check valves. And if they're functioning, will slow the tide as far as coming back in. If it's a heavy rain, we're still going to get a lot of water in the street, but we'll have less water than if the valve fails and the tide is in and then the rain's on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know. I knew that they had been being installed, yeah, sort of at the lowest, next to the lowest, next to the next to the lowest, and now really we're having them installed at every location of the outfall, which I think there are about 7.
Something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know the exact number.
So Bob, if I just bring me back to December when we did have all that water, because you're on the water side of Prince Royal, were you guys, or Golden Hind, were you getting water from the bay in, or was it just coming up through the drainage inlets in the street?
I think the check valve was not working at that point, and then we had, a lot of rain at the same time, and that was an 8-foot tide. So the areas that I am is a little bit higher, so I don't believe it was coming between the houses, although it did come around and get in some people's garage, but it didn't get all the way into the street. It was primarily in the street because it had backed up through the outfall and also all of the rain that was there. .3, personal best.
So, sorry to go back to, so for the Lagoon one, I have 2 questions. The Lagoon one pump station, the corrosion holes and anodes at the end of the life, what is the risk of that? Those things happening, that situation right now that pump station or, pump station won't work properly? And what's the timing on getting it to work or fixing those things? And the second question I have is, being new to the flood control board, is there an opportunity to go out with the maintenance staff and go to all these different locations and see them and see how they work and sort of hear what they're talking about and repairing?
So first part, I think right now it's not an issue. The pump station's working fine. Ideally, the anodes basically protect the metal parts of the pump station from corroding. So it's definitely a priority to replace those to protect it further. And then the parts that already have holes in them, we're just gonna have to replace, but it's kind of on the list to do. But as mentioned, the pump station is working, so it shouldn't be a problem. And the other thing is that since we installed the high canal pump station, which is basically further down from Lagoon 1, the Lagoon 1 and Lagoon 2 pump stations aren't actually doing as much anymore. For the most part, they are staff just open the floodgates and water just drains out of Lagoon 1 into High Canal and then is pumped out by High Canal pump station. So the Lagoon 1 pump station doesn't play as big of a part anymore, but that's we are planning to fix those issues in the near term. And then, yeah, as far as touring the pump stations, I definitely think we could set that up probably in the drier months when, you know, our crews aren't so busy. But yeah, we could.
Well, Chris, I was going to suggest a couple things there. And so we have done some kind of, call it, overview presentations of flood board in the past. So, you know, that's an option. The things that are immediately available that I would encourage flood members to look at who haven't, who weren't present for some of those discussions last year when we were going through the master plan is the YouTube videos from the discussion of the master plans, and then also the master plan itself. Those would be a great place to really sink your teeth into it and get a lot of information. And then beyond that, we can kind of fill in the gaps and present a flood board if needed. You know, we've got maps. We can go through that as well. I want to be kind of a little bit prudent about how much staff time we put into this if we're doing tours and whatnot. So
Yeah, it was just more, if they're out there doing their job, can we tag along and learn? You know, I mean, it's easy to, I read through the plan, but you know, it's just a piece of paper on your computer screen, but I'm a visual learner, so it'd be helpful for me to actually be there and see it and have them point something out. Wouldn't have to take any more time for them.
So RJ.
That's what I would, that would be helpful for me personally.
Yeah. RJ, what I could do is we could do a drive around and I could talk to you about what I've learned being on the flood board. And can I take Sally also, or does that impact the Brown Act if three of us were driving around just to oversee or to get a look-see of the flood infrastructure?
I think now that there's 7 members, 3 is okay, but not 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll try to coordinate that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll set that up.
And I have some pictures from the last gate maintenance. So just to show you. So top right is Lagoon 1. So you can actually, our crews recoded it, but you can kind of see like where it's rusting again. Those are kind of the weak spots. So those definitely need some attention. And those, you can kind of see towards the bottom, there's like something surrounding the pipe itself. Those are the anodes that are, or the sacrificial anodes that basically are at the end of their life, need to be replaced. The bottom right is High Canal pump station, or those are the gates, but it's next to the pump station. So you see one of our crew members down there power washing all the barnacles off and just cleaning up everything. The left side is in one of the wet wells. I actually think that is High Canal pump station. So they just go in there, clean everything, clean all the transducers, make sure everything's working.
That won't be part of the tour.
Yeah. You're welcome to scrape barnacles if you want, but that's a lot of work. Yeah, left side there. That's exactly what they're doing. They're scraping sea life off and then cleaning the trash racks. And the bottom right is actually one of the transducers, which clearly wasn't working very well, but it's just covered in clams and things. So they're constantly having to clean everything and make sure it's working. So yeah, the crew's been working hard.
Question for you. So, you know, we have a bunch of boats. My husband has a sailing business. Do you guys actually put any anti-fouling paint on the anodes? Because we do that. I don't know, because we use sacrificial anodes on our boats too. I don't know if that would help with the buildup.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll ask them if they are using that.
There's like marine anti-fouling paint you get like at West Marine. maybe to at least keep that part of it from happening. Although I don't know if that helps, keeps the actual, galvanic action from happening too. So I
Yeah,
don't want to
that-
interfere with that
I
either.
think that I don't know if you can coat anodes because of that reason. Otherwise, they don't like, they're sacrificial, so they're supposed to corrode. But yeah, they just have a life time that, and then you have to replace them. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this item. Is any other questions?
Any other questions? I did have a question about the Big Five pump station. Is it possible that that can be eliminated now with the San Clemente pump station and the way the San Clemente gate valve is being operated?
Oh, the Big G pump station.
Big G.
That is actually called out in the master plan. There would have to be improvements to San Clemente pump station. Basically, they would have to make the wet well deeper, and then they could pipe the water that Big G currently pumps across the street. But it would take a lot of work. It basically we'd need to rebuild San Clemente pump station to accomplish that.
So I was thinking, I was thinking that the watershed for that is so small that it could just go ahead and directly empty into the canal behind the Nugget Market and the gym, and that you could eliminate that pump station, which I think now just pumps into that canal. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just a lift station, so it's just taking the water and pumping up and over the levee there. But the Nugget Market and the parking lot are so low that if you were to turn Big G off, then it would potentially get flooded, storm. Because that canal behind Nugget actually has a levee kind of on both sides, so it's protecting Nugget from the water going through it.
I'll have to look at it with you sometime.
Yeah.
Bob, just so.
Sometimes I have to see it.
Yeah.
Just so because I've seen in the master plan a lot of reference to abandoning the Big G pump station. What is the flood prevention benefit of putting dollars into getting that pump station out of there? I just didn't understand.
You want to pull it up on the map to show where that is?
Sure. So the Big G pump station is right here where my arrow is pointing. You can see it. And it basically is just taking water from this tiny area behind Nugget Market, and it just pumps it over the levee and into this channel. And then that water runs over to San Clemente pump station and is pumped out. So it's a tiny little watershed, but it's just at such a low elevation that it has to have a pump currently. So unless we modify San Clemente pump station, that Big G pump station has to remain for now. And I think to answer your question, the benefit is, I mean, every pump station there's a pretty big dollar amount for maintenance. Every gate maintenance, our crews are going out there cleaning it, replacing parts, all that stuff. So anyone we're able to eliminate will save money term. But yeah, that'll take a large capital improvement to upgrade San Clemente.
Thank you.
We don't have any questions online, so.
Okay, so King Tide pop-up.
So in December, we had some large king tides and held a pop-up basically for the neighbors to come check it out and just see the potential impacts. And that this is our climate adaptation outreach had basically come to an end. So this was sort of like the last thing we held for the public. So on December 12th, it was on Friday, we went out and took a look. Here's some pictures. The recorded tide that day, or I guess maybe it was on the 13th. Oh yeah, it was the 13th, sorry. The recorded tide was 7.5 feet. So you can see on the left, that's the top of the Marina Village berm. And we've added sandbags at that low spot because there's just not a lot of freeboard there. So water was already, getting up there. I think maybe there was a foot from the sandbags to the water. And then the following day, which is Saturday, so we didn't get to see it in person, but at Richmond, they recorded an 8.37 foot tide due to storm swell and everything going on. So that's really high. And unfortunately, we didn't get any pictures from that day, but I have to imagine the water was pretty close to the top of the or the berm there. So that definitely shows, the risk just right now, even, let alone if, you factor in sea level rise in the future. So the pictures on the right are another area that are kind of at risk at the end of Channel Drive. These are kind of around number 26 channel. And when we showed up there, this was at 7.5 foot tide. There was some water already getting around the house and going into the road. So that, just shows that there's other areas along the berm around Marina Village that are definitely lower and could be a risk for overtopping. So yeah, the bottom right is there. The house is under construction, but that's like the backyard underwater, and then the two pictures on the top are kind of on the sides of the house, just showing water getting around just a little bit, but wouldn't take much more for water to get past. So we did actually on the top right picture, there's kind of an old wood wall there. And we had our crew add some sandbags there just to shore it up a bit. But we don't know the exact elevation, so that would be a priority when we start the design of the Marina Village berm improvements.
Dave.
So Chris, that's my neighborhood, and after 10 years of walking around, but now with the dog, I've noticed a gate just to the left of that middle picture. And I've always, so I'm now curious, is it just one way to allow water out into the channel or into the marsh?
Kind of past the end of Channel Drive.
Yeah.
That is an old floodgate that was meant to, let water in or out, depending on if it's open or not. It's just a sheer gate. But our crews used to leave it cracked in the summer so that at high tide water would get into the Marina Village detention basin and basically flush the water a little bit. But at a certain point, it's basically just gotten buried in mud and is no longer operational. So,
but that's where you put some sandbags on top.
Well, that's not exactly where the gate is, but
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that detention basin that you're referring to, one of the reasons to leave that crack before was to allow water to get in to maintain the wetlands. Now, it never really did that because it just went around the edge of it. But I was told that was supposed to be a restored wetland. Is that correct, or is that just not true? It isn't a wetland. It's a lot of invasive plants and non-wetland vegetation.
You're talking on the inside of the Marina Village?
At Channel.
Yeah.
The end of Channel.
It's not technically wetlands because it's basically has a levee around it.
Yeah.
It's not tidally influenced. And the purpose of letting water in wasn't necessarily to keep water for the wetlands. It was to basically flush the detention basin so it doesn't get smelly in the summer. just so we don't have too much stagnant water because, you know, if there's no water going in, the pumps don't run and then it just sits there. But I think there are some sensitive habitat in there and marsh plants, but technically it's not a marsh.
Mhm.
So,
We haven't mapped it, so you know, there could be wetland species, but yeah, we just haven't mapped it.
yeah, that's true.
So one of the things that happens at the end of channel on 26 is that at high tides, it'll come between the houses, go into the street, it'll go down to the storm drain, and then come out on the other side of the street and run down into that detention pond. So that really keeps it from, flooding to a greater extent. And if there was more of a problem, some of that could be solved by just having another drain that would go directly into the detention pond.
Well, so,
Yeah.
and we observed that. I think the second house from the end, I think they used a lot of permeable type backfill that allowed water to travel subsurface and then percolate up, and then, like you said, cross over the road. Luckily, the pavement acts as a durable surface that doesn't scour away when you have scour critical flows. So, if it was an earthen berm, or our levees, you think of it, oh, well, it would just be a couple inches, but that couple inches can gain velocity and actually break down the levee somewhat fast. So in that situation that we saw recently, some of that was happening, but because it was happening at a paved roadway, it's not going to scour away.
Yeah.
And just to comment, so the storm on channel go out into the marshy area and into the detention basin, but it's become overgrown and we haven't been able to be maintaining the channels that drain it. So that's also one of our priorities because right now it doesn't drain very well and like water is sitting in the storm drains year round. So yeah, that could be improved too.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question on the pop-ups and just the community outreach that you've been doing. Is this something that you would anticipate doing in 2025, or was just this an initiative that was just last year? And have you sort of summarized the success of the outreach and how do you feel like it went, or is that kind of something you're doing in a future date?
I'll into that. So we did this shoreline engagement effort, which was designed to go through late spring of last year and had several of these pop-ups. That really led to a mailed survey to our basically target area, and which consisted of Marina Village, Mariner Cove, and Myrna Estates and the whole area kind of surrounding Nugget to really justify a potential project, and in this case, the Marina Village flood berm project. So that was successful. We heard a lot of great feedback. There was a lot of support for that project. And then beyond that, I think really our planning team wanted to kind of just keep the momentum. So they wanted to have another event in December and just kind of keep the dialogue going. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we do that, at least once a year. But I think really the most work and development is going to happen once we get those FEMA dollars and can actually tap into some real funding.
I just want to comment that the pop-ups have really been a great idea that Chris and RJ have organized that with other members of the town to go out and do outreach to get people to turn up to look at the problem areas and to get a better, especially if they didn't live directly on that spot, allowed people in the neighborhood to get a better idea of what the problems were and what the potential solutions might be. So it's really a good move on the part of the town to do those. And as RJ says, we should continue to do those in the future.
Okay, so yeah, that was it for that item. Any other questions before we move on?
Okay. 2025 work plan.
All right, RJ, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so recently we had some sessions with council through a strategic planning workshop. That's usually a time where staff kind of puts together a draft of what they believe is important and discusses with council, and council gives some thoughts and directions, and then we bring it back to an official council meeting. So this is what Public Works is focused on for 2025. They're kind of organized in different ways, but aside from, I think, looks like Hart Street, we may be mislabeled. Otherwise, the blue ones have a flood. I guess you're right. Hart Street does have a slight flood component. That's probably why it's highlighted. These all have some flood improvements built into each one of these projects. Chris can go into that in more detail. But yeah, this year, in general, by the numbers, it's roughly about $5.5 million of town capital improvement projects. And then what we're not showing is also our same staff manages the sanitary district, and we have upwards of a $10 million projects in that. So it's definitely a busy year, and lots of things going on, and happy to discuss any project in more detail if the board wishes.
Yeah, I can go through and just give a brief overview of a few of these. So Hart Street Connector Path is actually a multimodal project to add a kind of a bike connection down Hart Street, connecting to the Corte Madera Larkspur bike path. But it was the pipes that we're going to build over were identified to be basically that we need capacity improvement there. So we're going to take care of that while we do the connector path. So we're planning to replace the storm drains there. Urgent storm pump station repairs. The storm drain master plan identified 1.8 million in urgent short-term repairs. So we're splitting that up into 2 years. We're going to try and take care of $900,000 in repairs this year. Replacing auto parts, updating controllers, and that sort of thing. So that's underway. Storm drain priority projects. Basically, we're trying to fight off the worst of the storm drains that the storm drain master plan pointed out. Basically, a lot of corroded pipes, metal pipes, and other things. So we're going to see how much we can fix with the $1 million this year. So that'll be definitely a good start. Trying to take care of the very high priority issues. 2024 Madera Garden Storm and Sewer, that project's already underway. It's like 90% sanitary sewer and 10% storm, but we're trying to fix some ponding around Madera Gardens and then just fix any issues that our consultant found with the storm system. So that's that one should be done in April. Moving on to the right side, large trash capture devices. Technically, I mean, it's not exactly flood control, but through our NPDES permit with the State Water Board, we're required to basically install devices to capture trash in priority areas around town. So we are planning to install 2 large trash capture devices on San Clemente Drive that will take care of a large portion of the town. And it's fully funded by an EPA grant. So that's a good one that we're trying to get going. Open channel maintenance. This has kind of been on the list for a while. our crews are limited in what they can do with our open channels around town. A lot of them are overgrown and silted in, so we're gonna just kick off a project to get the environmental work started to try and take care of some of those. And then Shorebird Marsh Pump Station, that was basically the number one recommended pump station to get replaced in the storm drain master plan. And so we're getting the design kicked off this year, and it's going to be a multi-year project. And I think it's $8 or $9 million to replace that pump station. So that'll be a major project. And then also just we've budgeted $100,000 for cleaning out storm drains, because in the past we haven't really been proactive, but usually we just are reactive when like something starts backing up, we clean it out. So we're trying to take on kind of the worst of the pipes that were laid out in the master plan.
The large trash capture, is that involve grates over the openings, or is this a more complex capture plan?
It's a little bit more advanced. The water board requires that you filter out, I think it's 5 millimeters. So it's a small screen. It's like to get out every little piece of trash. So they make small devices that are basically just screens that you put in catch basins, and we put a few of those in already. But these large ones are these massive devices that you bury in the ground. And basically the water goes in, it's like a circular basin, and as the water spins around, it filters out the trash, and then it goes out the other side. So there's going to be one of them to filter out water going into the Marina Village detention basin, and then one farther down San Clemente, and that basically takes care of a large portion of town. It's a very large watershed.
Yeah.
Do any of those, are those going to get installed on the canals that go into the lagoons as well? Is that part of the plan in the future?
So we're only required to install them where there's a priority trash area, I think it's called. Generally it's like where there's commercial districts and area. Basically they did a survey, they went around town and basically looked where there's trash. So most of the residential areas aren't included because they're cleaner for the most part, but areas like along Tamla Vista Boulevard and San Clemente, where we have businesses and larger developments, those were kind of the areas we have to take care of.
Interesting, because sometimes the trash comes into the lagoons too, and it comes from the park. And I just remember hearing discussion that some of those catchments were or some of these elements were going to be installed to prevent that from coming into the lagoon. So it sounds like that's not part of the plan.
Well, so there are farther upstream, like Tamalpais Drive and like you said, Town Park. Those are on the list. So the small storm drains in Madera Gardens, probably not, because that's not where the trash is coming from. It's coming from like Tamalpais and like the downtown area. So eventually, once we have 100% trash capture, those areas should be covered.
Gotcha.
What kind of maintenance is required and how frequent to just get those devices cleaned out? Is it a Vector truck or how do you do it?
Yeah, it's a Vector truck, and it's definitely going to be a lot of work. We're still trying to figure out. I think you have to clean them at least twice a year, but they're still kind of figuring out what the maintenance requirement is. And the other big issue that we don't really have an answer for is once you clean them out, like where do you bring, all the stuff? Because there's a lot of sediment and other things. The dumps won't take it, and so you have to have a place to dispose of it. So Mixed Stop, which is the county-wide stormwater agency, works with all the cities and towns. They've been trying to figure that out, find a place for all the cities to use. So hopefully we'll have an answer coming years.
Yeah, I've used devices like that. I don't know if it's the exact same one. And we found that the maintenance was more expensive than we thought because it wasn't just the vac truck. We had to actually go in and pull the cartridges that when the water spun through them, and those cartridges itself, we had the disposal issue with those. So probably some online stuff about is kind of the timeline for doing that stuff.
Yeah, I know other large cities that have the phase one NPDS permit like already has a lot of those devices in, so they've been giving us good information about what the maintenance obligation is going to be.
The highlighted blue items here, and work in general, I guess. How much of this cost is subcontracted out? How much is just materials, and how much is just handled by the full-time, whoever the maintenance staff is for the Public Works and Sanitary District Department?
So this list is our capital improvement project. So this basically doesn't include our maintenance staff for the most part. They're doing other things on the side. These projects, some of them, I believe the costs are generally just the construction costs that some of them may have design built in, but typically just because of our workload, we find consultants to design them, and then the town bids it out, and we get a contractor to construct. So
it's all subbed out, basically.
we're contracted out, yes, for almost all of these. Yeah, our maintenance staff's limited on what they can do. I mean, they do small repairs and improvements, but for projects of these size, they can't take that on.
Got it. Thank you.
Chris, you mentioned the Shorebird Marsh pump station replacement. Is that like for like replacement, or was there any consideration on what that area is gonna have to do eventually if there is a berm or seawall eventually?
That's a good question. I think we're gonna have to look into that. Right now, I think the one big improvement we'll have to make is right now the pump station isn't connected to the electrical grid. It has a gas power or diesel powered basically generator that it has to fire on every time the pump station runs. So definitely we want to make that an electric powered pump and connect to the grid. So that's one improvement. But as far as size and whether if that levee gets improved, we'll have to look into what could be done. I think I don't know at this time, but
I think what we know is the foundation and a lot of the concrete reinforced structure is compromised. There's cracks in that foundation. There's exposed rebar. So just the structural integrity of it, which is on some sort of deep pile foundation, is compromised. Will we go in there and make it, larger in some way? Possibly. But I think really just getting it to where it can, even if we could swap it out and get it to last another 75 years, that's a definite minimum thing we're going to look at. But obviously we'll look at that in terms of analysis. But given the size of the retention basin of Shorebird Marsh, I'd be surprised if we upsize the pumps significantly.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending upsizing them now. I think it's probably worth looking at the watershed flow or flood design that Schaff and Wheeler did, and it would show you how much water during a high water event, fresh water, would come into that marsh. Currently, you don't have to pump it all against the tides, but if you imagine that there was a berm that was outboard of that station, eventually someday that you would have to pump all that water out during high tide. It might be so big that you're not going to consider expanding it, but if it's a matter of making it expandable, it might be worth just knowing how much bigger than a like for like replacement such a facility would be.
And that's a good point. Building in the future, pressure head that it's going to have to push against definitely will be part of the project. Our climate adaptation assessment did identify that existing smart rail alignment as our kind of current and future flood barriers. So, over time that might need to be raised. And then, the pumps would then have to be able to handle that additional pressure that it'd be pushing against.
It's right here. It's this white building. So that's the other tricky part of this project is you have shorebird marsh and then the tidal wetlands on the outside. So two sensitive habitats that we'll be building in.
And I think, Chris, it's worth, I mean, I know we were talking about San Clemente. I think it's worth showing. So San Clemente is our largest pump station, but partly that's because the wet well or retention basin behind it is so small. There isn't much storage behind it, and therefore the pumps have to be really big because they just have to handle all the water that comes when it comes. So maybe just fly over there real quick and give people a sense of that one.
Yeah, so you can see this is Shorebird Marsh, next to the village. And so a lot of capacity here during storms. That we drain it down before storms, and then so it can fill this entire area up before it would cause any flooding. Versus going back to San Clemente Pump Station, which is right. You can see my mouse is right over here. It basically is just this little open channel that goes around the neighborhood. But very little capacity. It keeps going up Madera del Presidio. But yeah, there's just not a lot of storage space. So if it's really raining hard, the channel fills up and it has to be pumped out basically immediately before it starts flooding.
And then show Marina Village, because you just flew over that. I think that's another good example for kind of comparing size.
Oh yeah, so this is Marina Village, the actual neighborhood. This is the detention basin right here. And then this is also kind of storage space because the berm goes around this area. So it has, this is kind of in between. It has a little bit more storage space. And this actually this pump station pumps into Shorebird Marsh. So that water ends up going over there.
But the high berm that we want to build up is the more northern berm going out, not really right behind the houses, correct?
I mean, I think we're trying to take care of all of it because any, the lowest point is going to be your weak spot. So right now we know this area is low where we have the sandbags, and then, at the end of channel where we have those pictures, that area is low. So if you fix one and leave the other, if there was a large storm event and high tide and this gets overtopped here, then you're in the same trouble that you would have been if you had done that.
And based on 2019 LiDAR work and actually one of our king tide pop-up events, you want to go to those kind of 5 homes off of Paradise that also have, we think, are some low spots. So this is where, with the funding from FEMA, we'll really start surveying that whole entire area that touches San Clemente Creek and or the marsh, and really have a good handle on what is truly low and what isn't, and where things are going to fail first. So.
Yeah, and one of the other pop-ups, we were able to go into the backyards here, and the water was, right up to close to the top. Yeah, so it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed.
And the Marina Village detention pond takes water from Marina Village, but also from San Clemente and some from the other side of 101 also?
Correct. Yeah. It takes water from part of Casa Buena and Meadow Sweet, and comes across, there's a pipe under the freeway, goes by Toscalito, and then eventually drains into the detention basin. So yeah, it's not just draining Marina Village. There's larger watershed.
And that's all gravity driven.
Yeah.
But then there are pumps on that to pump that out if it filled up in a storm, primarily.
Yeah, it's gravity to the detention basin and then it has to be pumped out. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
free
gotta
bike path.
update it.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. There was a low spot in the middle that we raised up.
It's the David Bell bike path.
Beautiful bike.
Yes, yes, nicely done. Good work, town.
Cited in the table, it was mentioned, it wasn't highlighted, a Paradise Drive pump station. Was that the same as the San Clemente? Left under
That's our sanitary district pump station, Paradise.
Paradise Pump Station, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our largest sewer pump station that really pumps the lion's share of all the.
Sanitary District 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Sanitary
Is
District
that
2.
what we also call San Clemente Pump Station?
No,
No,
this
it's
is
separate.
sewage. Sanitary.
Yeah, that's the primary pump station for all of sanitary district 2, and it pumps it to central Marin Sanitation Agency, CMSA, over in San Rafael. Chris, might as well, we got the map going, might as well show them on Google.
I'll point it out. One second. So the sanitary pump station is right here. And I can see the confusion because it's next to San Clemente Drive and San Clemente pump station's on Madera del Presidio, but naming aside, so this is our largest sanitary pump station, and it pumps the sewage all the way over to the sanitary plant over here. But, yeah.
On an average of 1 million gallons per day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it goes a long way.
Oh, is it buried behind like the Herc Rental Agency?
No, there's a structure. I mean, it goes very deep underground, but yeah, it's kind of in this alleyway behind Herc Reynolds.
Oh, yeah. Okay, any questions on the work plan?
Question. The flooding that happens on Tamil Vista or the backup that happens in front of the hotel, well, does any of this impact, or is there any, I don't remember from the storm drain master plan, is there any, like they were going to dig out, I think on the back of it. Is there any plan to help alleviate that? That was quite built up in the last rains.
Yeah, so the cause is that water drains, or that storm system drains to the freeway and goes down along, and it's a Caltrans maintained ditch. And Caltrans, for environmental reasons, I believe they can't maintain it or have decided not to. So it was identified in the master plan, but not very high priority. But I think we're going to evaluate if we can try and take care of that. What we have to do is basically reroute it to drain the other direction towards High Canal. Yeah, either Lagoon 1 or High Canal, just whatever is feasible. So we're gonna take a look and see if we can do that sooner than later, because it's an issue every time it rains. Yeah.
Or raise Tamla Vista portion.
Yeah.
Project updates?
All right, I'll keep this brief because I think we already talked about some of these. The San Clemente Pump Station outfall pipe rehab project is officially complete. So if you ever drive down Madera del Presidio, you'll see new fence and pipes sticking out behind it. But project went really well. We had a good contractor, and Yeah, everything went great. So we just filed a notice of completion for that project. So yeah, I talked about the Madera Garden Storm and Sewer. That one's ongoing, completion in April. And then the next gate maintenance will be the spring one, likely in April. So I can provide some updates after that. And that's pretty much it for now. We're just getting
Okay.
a lot of projects going.
All right. Future agenda items. David.
I'd like to see, what the town and I'll call it regional planning. I've seen lots of, media coverage about, other organizations. Let's see, with storm drain, I mean, with, flood, sea level rise. Bay Area has the first ever regional sea level rise plan from BCDC. So just in general, how are we integrating and planning our efforts with the county and other entities? I know that we commented and signed off on a letter that the council, you remember that, Bob? You endorsed a letter or a plan to incorporate.
It was some recommendations from the county, and that was the town response to it.
Yeah.
I recall that. I don't recall the details on it.
So just an idea for the next meeting to see how we are integrating our efforts with broader regional efforts.
So some of you are deeply involved in this and really aware of it. Others not so. And one of the ways that I've learned about all the other regional agencies is attending the North Bay Watershed Association meetings held on the first Friday of the month. And these are water and sewage agencies together, but also a lot of environmental concerns about the bay. BCDC, Corps of Engineers, others will be involved in those. And, these are open to the public. I'm on their mailing list, and you could get on by just North Bay Watershed Association saying you want to be on the mailing list and to attend the meetings. You don't have to RSVP for them. I tend to attend the ones that have an interesting agenda that I think relates to some of our problems.
Sort of piggyback on what David said, I had previously shared with some of you and with town staff trying to synthesize all the data that town uses around sea level rise, whether it's our official subsidence calculations and projections or our official measurement points or future sea level rise estimates. And I tried to put all those together in a way that made sense specifically for Golden Hind and ebb tide. I know some of you and staff had looked at it and Phoebe had some questions, but I think if staff could come to an agreement on how to present that stuff, it could be a simple data set and a simple single graph that would sort of baseline all of us and the town itself for what our current calculations are and how far out sea level rise is going to happen. I think it makes it a lot easier to understand the timing of when we should do things and when we have time to wait.
Good idea.
I have one more thing. In the August Town Council meeting, we had talked about putting together a working group for the lagoons. And I've been kind of waiting for this first meeting to kind of kick that off, but it would be good if we could have an agenda item in one of the next meetings to talk about how to engage on that.
There was once a comment about whether we would look for grant funding for the folks who are interested in raising houses. I'm not sure if that was just a comment I remember from one of our meetings from last year, but has that ever been explored? And if we could update on that.
So that is something that our planning group has on their work plan. I think it's twofold. One was to loosen some of the design review requirements about building height that kind of get kick into that discussion. And so I think they've already put some of those in action. So it's easier to raise your house in neighborhoods such as Marina Cove compared to previous years. And then a step forward beyond that, they're going to look into possible grants, but we don't have a whole lot to present or update on that specific aspect right now.
I think the town and the planning department is to be congratulated. They looked at problem areas, and previously, if you were raising your house, you may have to have a variance for the height. Well, they eliminated that if you're just, raising it to FEMA base flood 11 to resolve flooding issues. There's no variance required, and you're able to add on 250 square feet of space to the house without going through design review or anything. It'll be a staff decision on that. And that helps if you're expanding the porch or stairs or something like that to deal with it. So the plan is, the planning department has been very proactive in recognizing this problem area and resolving it. It'd be nice to have a grant that would help us raise our houses and offset that, but I'm not sure if that'll happen. Gotcha.
This is probably more something for like late summer, fall, is talking about the road closure guidance. But, not an immediate, you guys got a lot on your plate, but I think before the next series of king tides, before December, it'd be nice to have some alignment, right, on, where and kind of the plan and, how to stage some materials and stuff. So, even if public works staff can't get out there.
So, and you're looking at trying to have some signage that would be available to the public that they could put out in the event of flooding, a no wake zone or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Kayaks only or something,
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
anything further? Going once, meeting adjourned.